What's going on, guys? It's Greg here, aka NYPrepper. It is Monday, March 12th, 2025, and I have another emergency alert to share with you guys. Right now, it is 15:16 Eastern Time here in the United States, and I wanted to update you guys on the situation between Pakistan and India, and I also wanted to update you on Ukraine and also Iran. So, what you're looking at here are some U.S. military flights. We have two U.S. Air Force Nuke Sniffer planes airborne this afternoon. One of them is currently over Alaska, appears to be going towards Asia. And then there was another one over Nebraska that turned its tracker off. Now, these planes are responsible for detecting radiation in the atmosphere after a nuclear detonation or a nuclear power plant meltdown or any kind of radiation release. They can detect traces of radiation in the atmosphere. So for there to be two of them up in the air is extremely unusual. And this tells me that our military is either concerned about a nuclear exchange between Pakistan and India, or potentially Russia is going to be doing a nuclear test of some kind, or maybe North Korea. What's interesting is one is going over to the Pacific, okay? So potentially a nuclear test, potentially Iran testing nukes, or Russia or North Korea, or potentially a nuclear exchange between Pakistan and India. And I wanted to remind you guys that today is the day that Russia closed the airspace over its Kapustin Yar test range, which is the base where Russia launched the Oreshniks at Ukraine from the first time. So potentially Russia may be launching another Oreshnik at Ukraine. There was also a Russian missile tracking plane, an open skies plane that flew from Moscow down towards Kapustin Yar last night. Okay, and we also had a large number of nuclear codes transmitted by U.S. nuclear forces late last night and so far this afternoon. And we've had over, I think, 25 or 30 so far, okay, since midnight last night. So that is a lot. So something is going on for there to be two nuke sniffers up in the air. And NBC News reports that Israel told U.S. officials that now is the perfect time to destroy Iran's nuclear facilities. And we know that the B-2 stealth bombers have already left Diego Garcia. So potentially that could be either because of the Pakistan-India escalation, and they want the bombers here at home if there's any kind of escalation, or Trump is not considering using them on Iran. And the Prime Minister of India told the U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance clearly that if Pakistan does something, the response will be more devastating and strong. Wow. Okay, so India is not messing around. And Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says they might soon have to begin phasing out Israeli reliance on U.S. security aid. Okay, so Netanyahu, after being humiliated by Trump, basically Trump going behind Netanyahu's back and doing this nuclear deal with Iran and now a ceasefire deal with the Houthis, it's not looking too good as far as Netanyahu and Trump's personal relationship. And now Netanyahu is saying that Israel has to start phasing out their reliance on U.S. security aid. And before I continue with the breaking news, I wanted to mention the sponsor for this update, which is NYPrepper Supply. Guys, NYPrepper Supply has brought back their $200 discount on their 3-month emergency food supply. And to get the discount, you got to go to preparewithnyprepper.com, and the link is in the description below this video. That's preparewithnyprepper.com to get $200 off the NYPrepper Supply 3-month emergency food supply. This is freeze-dried food. So it has a 25-year shelf life, and it's all packed within 6 rugged watertight buckets. So it doesn't take up a lot of space. You can easily fit this in a small closet in a studio apartment. And the food has all of your essential vitamins and minerals and up to 2,000 calories per day. So use the link preparewithnyprepper.com to get the My Patriot Supply 3-month emergency food supply, 25-year shelf life for just $500. That's $200 off their normal price. So use the link in the description below this video. And CNN is reporting, citing Trump administration officials, that Washington received disturbing intelligence about India and Pakistan on Friday morning. So basically, they must have had some very, very concerning intelligence that Pakistan was getting ready to use nuclear weapons. If you remember, Thursday night or Friday was when we got the news that Pakistan's Nuclear War Committee was meeting with the Pakistani Prime Minister, okay? So it could have been a really serious situation. Now, there is a ceasefire in place in Pakistan and India, but so far the ceasefire has not really been followed, and Pakistan is continuing to attack India, and India has been responding. But CNN reporting, citing Trump administration officials, that Washington received disturbing intelligence about India and Pakistan on Friday morning. And interestingly, a cargo plane carrying boron landed in Pakistan yesterday. Boron is commonly used for neutron absorption, particularly in nuclear reactors. So this could be because Pakistan is planning to enrich more uranium and potentially build more nuclear weapons, or maybe for contingency reasons. If there's some kind of a nuclear exchange with India, they want to have boron on hand to clean up any kind of radiation. And the Times, citing leaked documents, is reporting that Britain and the European Union are set to unveil a defense agreement as part of a comprehensive deal. The agreement confirms that both sides face the greatest threat in a generation due to Russia's invasion of Ukraine. The agreement stipulates a mechanism for joint action if Washington refuses to take action within the NATO framework. Wow. Okay, so the UK and the EU signing a massive defense agreement confirming that the greatest threat in a generation is in their midst, and it's due to Russia's invasion of Ukraine. And India claims that Pakistan violated the ceasefire repeatedly, and they said they already retaliated. We're hearing that Pakistan hit 26 Indian military facilities, and dozens of its drones hovered over major Indian cities, including India's capital, New Delhi, in offensive operations on Saturday, a Pakistan military spokesperson said at a press conference late on Sunday. Okay, so Trump's ceasefire between India and Pakistan seems to not be holding too well. And the Indian Navy has confirmed that their presence and posturing is such that they can strike and completely destroy Pakistan's most critical port, the Karachi port, from sea. And the Indian Foreign Secretary Vikram Misri said an understanding was reached between India and Pakistan to stop the military action that was going on for the last few days. For the last few hours, this understanding is being violated by Pakistan. The Indian Army is retaliating and dealing with this border intrusion. This intrusion is extremely condemnable, and Pakistan is responsible for it. We believe that Pakistan should understand this situation properly and take appropriate action immediately to stop this intrusion. So India's foreign secretary confirming that Pakistan is violating the ceasefire. And Pakistan's information minister Atullah Tarar has denied any ceasefire violations, calling reports from Indian media baseless. In an interview with Geo News, he stated Pakistan cannot and has not violated the ceasefire, nor have we even considered it. This is a moment of celebration for us, and people are rejoicing as it's a victory. And Indian sources say the fighting along the line of control in the Kashmir region is worse now than it was ever before, and even since the start of the conflict. Wow. Okay, so the fighting along the border of Pakistan and India in Kashmir, the disputed region, is the worst it's ever been, even after this so-called ceasefire. And Reuters, citing 3 Indian government sources, is reporting that the Indus River Treaty between India and Pakistan is still in a pending state. So India has not reinstituted their water, and India will formally change its rules of engagement on Pakistan. Any future act of terror will now be considered an act of war against India. And there's still blackouts being enforced in parts of India in the Kashmir region, and that's for safety purposes to make it harder for the Pakistanis to target different areas. And clashes are currently taking place at multiple locations along the line of control, with reports of heavy shelling in Poonch, Nakyal, Datut, and Tarkundi sectors, okay? And there were 5 or 6 explosions reported last night in Udhampur, Jammu, and Kashmir. Violent explosions rocked the Srinagar, Jammu, and Kashmir region. Explosions were reported over Islamabad, the capital of Pakistan, likely interceptions of drones. And the Iranian foreign minister said if the U.S. aims to strip Iran of its nuclear rights, we will not back down from any of our rights. And Iran's foreign minister said the 4th round of talks with the U.S. was more serious and frank than prior rounds. And Israel's military option against Iran will remain even if the U.S. reaches an agreement with Tehran, according to Israeli Channel 12. And the U.S. may consider putting the military option back on the table if significant progress is not made in the 4th round of nuclear talks with Iran, scheduled for Sunday, this past Sunday. That was yesterday, citing sources close to U.S. envoy Steve Witkoff. And an Iranian facility located on Yemeni soil was targeted in a precision strike. The nature of the site remains undisclosed and unconfirmed. So either the Israelis or the U.S. hit some kind of Iranian facility in Yemen, maybe an IRGC base or something like that. And the White House spokeswoman Caroline Leavitt said President Trump's relationship with Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu is very strong. And Israeli warplanes were spotted over Syria's Quneitra and Daraa regions over the weekend. And the U.S. has approved the transfer of 125 long-range artillery missiles and 100 Patriot missiles from Germany to Ukraine. So the flow of weapons to Ukraine is slowly restarting. They already signed a massive F-16 training package, and now they're giving Ukraine Patriot missiles and long-range artillery. And some big news coming out of Russia. Putin over the weekend proposed direct talks with Ukraine on May 15th in Istanbul that he said should be aimed at achieving a durable peace and eliminating the root causes of the war. Putin thanked all mediators, including the Trump administration. Putin said, sooner or later, relying on the lessons of history and the opinions of our peoples, we will begin to move towards restoring relations with European states. Putin blamed Ukraine for not observing the ceasefire on energy infrastructure, the Easter truce, and accused Ukraine of sabotaging peace initiatives. So Putin is now calling for direct talks with Ukraine, okay, direct peace talks, okay, potentially even meeting Zelensky personally, okay, in Turkey. This is absolutely huge news. And I would be very, very cautious about this, because this could mean that Putin wants to rest and reconstitute his military and then focus on the Baltics and go for the Suwalki Gap and make a land connection to Kaliningrad. Okay, they've been building up a lot of forces there. And Russia has launched an air attack on Kiev last night, hours after Russia's president proposed direct peace talks with Ukraine. And Emmanuel Macron said Putin's proposal to initiate talks on Ukraine is a first step, but it is not enough. He said Russia must come to the table for a 30-day ceasefire. Okay, so they want Russia to declare a 30-day ceasefire, which they don't want to do. And Zelensky commented on everything. And he said, starting tomorrow, we expect a full and unconditional ceasefire, a lasting one, to provide the necessary foundation for diplomacy. This has long been Ukraine's position, echoed by our partners and the global community. We now await a clear response from Russia. The war will have to end and the killing must stop. Ukrainian forces are ready to respond in kind for a fair approach. We've heard from our partners that they are prepared to tighten sanctions if Putin rejects the ceasefire. I'll be in Turkey this Thursday, May 15th, and I expect Putin to be there as well. Personally, I hope this time he won't come up with excuses. We're ready to talk to end the war. Wow, so Zelensky is inviting Putin to go to Turkey this Thursday. And the U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio is set to visit Turkey later on this week from May 14th through the 16th. And Zelensky said European leaders had a productive phone call with Trump about the peace talks over the weekend. Ukraine and all allies are ready for a complete unconditional ceasefire on land, in the air, and at sea for at least 30 days, starting as early as Monday, the foreign minister Sabiha said. Okay, so it looks like they're pushing for the ceasefire. It may happen, but I would not lower my guard, okay, if I were you. All right, that just means Putin is going to reconstitute and either attack Ukraine again or attack the Baltics, which is what I think he's going to do. And Trump acknowledged in private that Russia is difficult to negotiate with because they want the whole thing, referring to Ukraine, the Wall Street Journal reported. And Britain and the U.S. will increase military assistance to Ukraine if Putin refuses a ceasefire, said British Prime Minister Keir Starmer. He also said, we are preparing to resume flights to Ukraine after the ceasefire. Interesting. So Britain wants to resume, I'm assuming, civilian flights to Ukraine after the ceasefire, which is pretty interesting. And that would, in a sense, stop Russia from launching drone attacks and missile attacks if there's British civilian airliners flying over Ukraine, because if they shoot down one of those airliners, then it would be, nuclear war. And Zelensky said that a demilitarized zone idea is dead, according to European Pravda. Speaking at a press conference on May 10th, Zelensky rebuked the idea of a demilitarized zone and emphasized the importance of first securing a ceasefire. And Ukraine struck the operational headquarters of the Russian army in the Kursk region in the town of Rilsk. And Kim Jong-un said North Korea's involvement in Russia's war is part of a sacred mission. Our involvement in the war was justifiable, and this belongs to our sovereign rights, North Korean dictator Kim Jong-un said. Wow. And Trump hailed a total reset with China as far as trade relations go. And we have some disturbing information coming out of Japan. The Japanese government is on high alert after a Chinese aircraft intruded into the territorial airspace of Japan near the Senkaku Islands in the Okinawa prefecture. The government is on increased alert after a recent series of intrusions by Chinese aircraft into Japanese territorial airspace around the Senkaku Islands. The intrusions have occurred alongside instances of Chinese ships entering Japan's territorial waters. On May 3rd, a Chinese helicopter entered Japan's airspace for about 15 minutes near the Senkaku Islands after taking off from a China Coast Guard vessel. Since 2012, Chinese aircraft have intruded into Japanese airspace 4 times, and 3 of those cases occurred around the Senkaku Islands. Wow. And Russian secret services were behind a massive fire that nearly completely destroyed a Warsaw shopping center in May of 2024, said Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk on Sunday, after a year of investigation into the case. Poland has now closed a Russian consulate in Kraków, which is the oldest city in Poland and the historical capital of Poland. Very interesting. And Russia's foreign ministry spokeswoman Maria Zakharova responded and said that Russia will now react to the closure of the consulate in Kraków. So that is huge news. And I want to share some other flights with you guys. Speaking of the Baltics, we had some unusual reconnaissance activity last night over the Baltics and this morning. So here you can see a Russian Navy plane flying to Kaliningrad. There was also a Russian Air Force cargo plane that went to Kaliningrad last night. We also had a NATO AWACS plane and a Polish plane of some kind patrolling the coast of Lithuania near Klaipėda, which is a major NATO terminal in Lithuania. This is where NATO and allied forces would reinforce the Baltics. If there were a war with Russia, they would go to the Klaipėda port. And so there was a NATO AWACS plane flying really low near Klaipėda at the same time as a Polish plane was. So very interesting. We also had an Estonian recon plane flying near Tallinn. And here's a closer look at the Polish recon plane and the NATO AWACS plane doing patrols near Klaipėda. They were flying super low, just a few thousand feet above sea level. Okay, they normally don't fly this low unless they're trying to get a closer look at something there near Klaipėda. Very, very interesting. And we also had a German Air Force cargo plane or VIP plane fly to Lithuania near the border of Belarus. They're really reinforcing this area here now. And then we also had 2 more recon planes last night in the Baltics. We had 1 private recon plane looping around Kaliningrad. We had 2 NATO AWACS planes. 1 NATO AWACS plane in Latvia and Lithuania, okay, patrolling these 2 countries here. And then last night we also had a U.S. Navy recon drone flying through the Gulf of Oman, the Persian Gulf, the Strait of Hormuz. And what's interesting is it was really focusing a lot of its time on the Bushehr area of Iran. There's a massive nuclear reactor in Bushehr. Okay, so very, very interesting. And here's what Trump said about the ceasefire in Ukraine and Russia on his Truth Social account. He wrote, "President Putin of Russia doesn't want to have a ceasefire agreement with Ukraine, but rather wants to meet on Thursday in Turkey to negotiate a possible end to the bloodbath. Ukraine should agree to this immediately. At least they will be able to determine whether or not a deal is possible. And if it is not, European leaders and the U.S. will know where everything stands and can proceed accordingly. I'm starting to doubt that Ukraine will make a deal with Putin, who's too busy celebrating the victory of World War II, which could not have been won, not even close, without the United States of America. Have the meeting now." Wow, so Trump is starting to lose faith in Putin. Look what he said. "I'm starting to doubt that Ukraine will make a deal with Putin, who's too busy celebrating the victory of World War II, which could not have been won without the U.S. And he's referring to the Lend-Lease program and also the Allied forces, the U.S., that landed in Normandy, okay? We actually gave the USSR weaponry when they got invaded by the Nazis, so they were actually using our weapons, okay? And then here's what he wrote about China. Very interesting. A very good meeting today with China in Switzerland. Many things discussed, much agreed to. A total reset negotiated in a friendly but constructive manner we want to see for the good of both China and the U.S. and opening up of China to American business. Great progress made. So lots of talk about a reset, okay? I don't know if they're talking about the Great Reset potentially and crashing all of the major currencies and instituting a one world currency, but very, very interesting. But that's the latest breaking news that I have. I might be back later on tonight with another update. Tune into my 24/7 live stream for continuing coverage and to listen to our nuclear forces. And until the next time, take care, God bless, and don't forget the 3 Ps. Prepare, practice, and persevere.